Hello and welcome along to the first round review episode of the Ground Effect podcast. Of course, we're going to be reviewing the first round of Season 3, which was, of course, the British Grand Prix. We will be covering all the comings and goings of this week's GRL action, from the mixed tier on Sunday to the F1 on Monday and the F2 on Wednesday. And as always, I'm very glad to say that I am joined by Atom. So, hello Atom, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good, thank you. We had some 9 great races in our first week of Season 3, and I can't wait to go just all over the data again and have a look who did well, and who has to prove themselves again in round 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically there were 10 races if you count 2 for F2.
True.
But I'm just being pedantic. I don't mean it. But yeah, I mean, it was a very good opening weekend to the season. I mean, we can take a quick look at the calendar, and of course, there we go. Great Britain was the first off, and I do think it was a very good season opener. We had very high quality races in the wet and the dry, in Formula 1 cars, in Formula 2 cars, and I do think that it has set us up for a great season to look forward to.
Yeah, definitely. Some great races all across the whole league, and yeah, as I said, something to build up on, and yeah, just amazing racing all the way, and beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it was, and nice to commentate over as well. I have to say, I was personally gutted when you disconnected halfway through a battle. That was really sad. But yeah, I remember you were going towards turn 1, and then there was a little lag glitch, and then I thought the thought, and I didn't want to think it, and then you disconnected, and I was so annoyed.
Yes, I saw the 3 X's on the cars ahead of me, and I knew I disconnected, but my heart just said, no, you've not disconnected, drive on. Don't leave.
Yeah, exactly.
And it kicked me out. I was like, just no, it can't be now when I'm literally behind the whole train on fresher tires. Yeah, I mean, I had my chance 1 lap later, but yeah, then it went downhill a little bit, but was a good first race all in all. So hopefully more to come in the next 2 races.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, I mean, if we look at the, we'll go back to what we were racing on this week. Of course, it was Silverstone. And I mean, there were so many good places. There's always great places at this track where you can fight. I mean, looking at the track now, turn 3. If you've got the overspeed, you can go for an inside move. You can try and set it up through turn 3 to try and get the run down that Wellington straight towards turn 6. But then also you've got places like Copse and Stowe and the Vale chicane. You can keep battling a long way around this circuit. And I think after having the races this week, it showed how good of a racetrack this can be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a bit different in F1 and F2 cars, obviously, because the Vale chicane, as you mentioned, it's more like a dive down inside there in the F1 cars, while you actually can make great switchbacks at the exit, the chicane in the F2 cars, which isn't really possible with the F1 cars unless the car ahead really struggles with the exit. And yeah, especially in F1, you could really feel the dirty air in maggots, backwards on the straight. But yeah, luckily it was a DRS train, so you didn't really lose too much unless you just made a huge error in there. In Division 1, obviously, we saw wet races as well in the other divisions where it wasn't really DRS affected. But yeah, it's a tough circuit, but also where you can make the moves without really trying to risk it all into one corner. But that's the next kind of circuit we're gonna come to from Sunday onwards, where it's a little bit different considering overtaking. But yeah, Britain was definitely a good start. It was interesting to get started with the season.
Definitely. But I mean, of course, we've got to the first action of the weekend that we've got to start with is what's going to start every weekend, and I'm very pleased to be coming onto this first. Is the is the mixed division. We've got the race results up here. There they are. It was a very good race for me in particular. I mean, you can see there, I very happily won that race by a good 7 seconds. But I mean, it was a good race, I have to say. I mean, there was no safety car in that race, but we did have quite a big strategy battle. I mean, off the bottom of the screen there was Radius, who was leading for quite a while, and Lone Retreat was as well until he made a mistake. So, you know, there were lots of. It was a more strategic race, I think, than an action race. And again, thanks to GRL Inui for doing the comms for it on Sunday. But I mean, of course, you came home P3. But with this being the only race with full qualifying, because every other mixed tier race will be reverse championship order, I think it changed the dynamics of the race that we won't see in other ones, because of course the quicker guys started at the front of the grid, and but in the coming weeks that the opposite will happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you got to separate it a bit. I mean, as said, full qualifying, the first and only time this season in GRL, as it seems, and it showed who is really up there for the beginning, which is a good show, because when the season goes on, you probably think, is it worth fighting that guy because I'm maybe clearly slower than him or not? And it definitely showed which people are very, very fast on also this kind of circuit. But yeah, now it's all reversed, and as said, we go to Singapore for next week. And if you're starting really at the bottom, you are very likely not going to make a podium position or a top 5. So some guys, like we see down there, P6 Exotic, or maybe Lone Retreat, who, if he races again, finished P8, is going to start P12 with a good strategy. And if he gets lucky with the safety cars, he might be one to watch out for. Or Otto down there. And yeah, we'll have to see, but it's definitely an interesting change compared to the classic Formula 1 and Formula 2 races.
Yeah, definitely. And also with because I won that race, I will be starting last in Singapore, which is an interesting thought, to be completely honest, because I don't know how interesting that'll be for the first few laps. But again, I mean, races, you can see there, WRL Exotic went from 19th to 6th, and of course, because the quicker guys started at the front, it just shows that you can make progressions in the field. And I think there's going to be a lot of good action in this tier that we won't necessarily see in others, where we've got the quick guys coming from the back to the front. And I am quite looking forward to that. Yeah,
definitely. And you have to not forget that it's the same track as Mondays for the 4 divisions, and you don't really need to sign up for the mixed division. It's just like, come on, race with us. That's just the definition of mixed division. So drivers might try something they wouldn't go for in the actual F1 race a day later. So it's all a bit mixed up, as said. And we'll probably see some people on the podium positions or even winning a race we wouldn't expect on a classic F1 race. So yeah, looking ahead to a very, very interesting season ahead.
Definitely. But we'll now move past this mixed tier race. We'll go straight on to the main Formula 1 races of the weekend, and we'll start with Division 1 and the results here. And I mean, it was a great race and really great results up and down the field. And it was TMS Sora who took home a debut victory in GRL, and just behind him was a debutant in BRT Sky Spider, and behind him was another debutant in GRL Drazzy. So it was a complete debut top 3, and I think they all really deserve the podium. But with that fight towards the end between Sora and Sky Spider, I mean, with Sky Spider's penalty, of course, that he got at the end, it kind of dampened the battle towards the end. But I think it still showed what there is to come, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Sora was very good on the alternate strategy, which I think overall seemed to be the better strategy, especially to get track position at the end. Because especially in the first 5 to 7 laps, the mediums were clearly quicker in their phase in the stint than the hards. But at the end, the hards just were kind of level pegging with the mediums, so I think it wasn't much difference. But yeah, I mean, Sora didn't put the foot wrong, neither did Spider, but I think just the momentum was on his side in the end, and then the penalty finished it off pretty much. But yeah, good start for Sora, and Spider was pretty much the fans' favorite, wasn't he? From the start off, so he's got his first enemy, I guess.
Well, yeah, I think it'll be an interesting battle, especially when when a couple of others like Ginger Ninja comes back, of course, next week. Of course, reigning champion, and if Pyro's able to make it, then I think it'll be a very interesting race. But also, I also think, I mean, I think it was something like lap 17, lap 18. We had 6 drivers within about a second and a half, and there weren't any safety cars to push them together. It just happened. I think you were one of them, weren't you, for a time? But
for a time.
we won't mention the spins, but yeah, I just do think it was a very. If that's anything to go by for the rest of the season, we really are in for a treat, I think, in Division 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the 2 ROM guys of Drazi and B4. Turn, I think, was in there as well. I had a look, but then decided to do something different. Rage was in there as well on this preset. Yeah, was all very close. But to be fair, there were a few guys who we expected a bit higher probably. Radius didn't have a great weekend. I mean, he qualified second, I think, started on the hards, but then once again his mistakes came in and he dropped it, which was unfortunate for him because I think he's technically one of the 3 fastest drivers in here. But you got to keep it consistent, especially on this grid. But also Blade, who we know for his consistency, he spun, I think, in the first or second lap at the exit of Cops. I mean, he took home a few points with P7, but still, we possibly expected a bit more from him. So will be interesting what he can do in the next few rounds because at this stage he probably starts the season as a bit of a dark horse.
Yeah, no, I agree. But of course, it was Sky Spider who took pole, so he's the first man to take it, and it was 1 minute 26.722, which is maybe not as quick as we were expecting. I'm not sure any of the laps were 100% hooked up together, but it was still of course quickest nonetheless. Radius was only 18 thousandths off as well in qualifying, so it just shows how tight it is. So of course Sky Spider took that point home for for pole. Fastest lap was, I think, Lone Retreat, but he finished outside of the top 10, so we didn't get that point. But yeah, I think it's a good start for Sora and Sky Spider, because I think, especially when the other guys come, that those extra points, 25 and 19 that they've got now, could really kind of help them stay. Well, I mean, it's just a bit of an advantage they've got already on some of their rivals.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, with the mistakes probably in quali, I mean, it can obviously happen because if you look at this grid, if you're driving there, you gotta be shaking a little bit because it's quite scary. But yeah, of course, the fastest lap and the pole position point definitely will help in the end because that's over 40 points at the end of the season. I think it's 42 points, 2 points per weekend. If you collect them, and that's almost 2 race wins. So they can be important at the end, but we'll see how it pays off. It's a long season. You got to keep it consistent, as said, and it will be a few drivers who will try to challenge Sora and Spider. But yeah, they were quite a bit running away with it in Silverstone. But I think especially for the next 1 or 2 rounds, the drivers who use a wheel instead of a pad will be the ones to watch out for, because I think that's 2 rounds that they'll dominate.
Well, yeah, I mean, Singapore as well. I mean, it's one of those tracks, isn't it? But I mean, we've got that to look forward to, and we should hopefully have a full grid for that. I'm really excited for that race because I think it's one of those tracks where you can make moves, but it's very easy to get it wrong, and that can kind of hamper your race and the other person's race, and then it could lead to penalties. And if they build up over the season, then you may have a problem come the end of it. So I think Singapore's definitely going to be an important race. We won't think it's important at the time, but I think it may be important come the end of the season.
Yeah, and I think the first lap's going to be very interesting because it's a street circuit, it's a tight circuit, and to make moves you technically need your opponent to leave you enough space to like make the move happen. Because if you, at the end of the longest straight where you get the DRS, if you place your car in the middle, it's pretty difficult for the car behind to decide whether they go down the inside or try it around the outside. So the first lap, I think, will probably be by far the best opportunity to make up positions. And if you just hold back, you might pick up a few as well, because I'm sure they'll not play it all cautious, all 20 of them. So I think we're in store for another blockbuster race.
Definitely, and I have to agree on that. But let's move past Division 1 and let's have a quick, well, not necessarily quickly, but let's have a look at the Division 2 results from this week. And it was Delta who took home a win in the wet. Division 2 was a wet race. He won it ahead of Zeech. But I think Delta, he took a gamble on that soft tyre in qualifying right at the end.
It was Inters. They were wet.
Was it Inters? Ah, right, I see. That's right. I knew I knew he'd gone for a slicker tyre, but he went for the Inters just too early. Just too early. And then
Delta said the Inter was the better tyre. Sorry. But he wasn't just out at the wrong moment. If he was out like 1 minute later because he had the time, just couldn't complete another lap.
Exactly.
The intermediate would have delivered him the pole position time, he said. But that's how it goes. But at the end, it was still enough, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, because it was Josh Gilly who took home pole in that qualifying session. A lot of people like the look of Josh Gilly in this Division 2, but you'll notice that he's not in the top 10, so he obviously wasn't able to convert that pole position. But Delta, I mean, he did really have a good race. He came from 13th on the grid to win it, and I mean, full credit to him, because there are a few drivers in Division 2 who you could make a case for them to be in Division 1, and I think Delta really made a case for himself to try and push his way up the division order.
Yeah, I think they had 2 safety cars in there, and the last one where Delta switched to the new Inters definitely did help him, because I think it was Skirt and Williams, who was leading from the 2 Mercedes of Josh Gill and Panos, and they seemed quite clear, like pace-wise. They weren't clearly faster than everyone, but they just kept it together. And they had gapped the rest of them while they were scrapping between each other. But then, the safety cars came in. Skirt, I think, pitted into traffic, which definitely didn't help his course. And then it was only the 2 Mercedes of Josh who made a mistake, I think, or just the tyres gave up on him. And Panos, who was suddenly on for a race win, disconnects, and his ghost car pits.
Yes,
and I think the penultimate or final lap, that was heartbreak. Or I think he's from Greece, so that would have also been the first Greece race win in GRL.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think all of them can still win a race in the season if they perform that well. But at the end, Delta could pick up the pieces on the new Inter tyres, which was a nice thing to see, especially for us from Division 1, who know him from last season. But definitely a few twists and turns already in round 1 of Division 2.
Definitely. And yeah, last thing to mention about Division 2 is the fact that the Ferraris finished in 3rd and 4th, which means that in Division 2 they take the championship lead. Oh no, they don't. No, they don't. I've just worked it out. They don't, because Delta and Lloyd, who finished 9th, puts Aston Martin on 27, so they're tied on 27. Aston Martin and Ferrari. But I mean, again, that AMS Lloyd Delta combination and the Scania Slapbus combination, they are two good teams, and I think that's a battle that can go on through the season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close also between them and Mercedes, because Mercedes showed the pace. But what I just want to have a hang on is that Aston Martin team is pretty much like dynamite, isn't it? It's Delta who either performs or ends it in a wall, or Lloyd who he finished P5 on track, but once again got the penalty, just picks up too many post-race penalties who cost him so many points last season, and once again in the first race. I think he got a reprimand and a time penalty. So he just needs to keep it clean and keep it together, because I think then Lloyd's really up there in Division 2. But he's struggling a bit for that, and also I think for practice. But yeah, I hope he can mix it up there, because the pace he showed in the first race was definitely a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Division 2 really is one to watch out for this coming year. But let's take a look. Let's move on from Division 2 and have a look at Division 3. And it was Cody Ghosts who took home the win in Division 3 in that Alfa Romeo. I think it was a very good win for Ghosts to pick up, and I think he showed us quite a lot of pace, which is why we have already moved him up to Division 2, because we felt that his pace was really strong in this race. But he wasn't alone. I mean, you can see Yoki and Thomas, the two Mercedes cars, did really very well there, and they got a good team result as well. So I think that there's a lot of interesting things to take out of this Division 3 race as well, because I think there were some guys who maybe underperformed slightly. There were a few post-race penalties. I know ET8 Steve got a post-race penalty. So there are a few there who could, find themselves a bit further up the pecking order, and I think Division 3 is really a tight one this season.
Yeah, I mean, it was I wouldn't say dominant win, because I think at the end of the day he only finished like 2 seconds ahead of P3, so it wasn't a pure domination. But his quali lap was pretty decent. He got the fastest lap, got the race win. We talked about it after the race. Is he the one to move up immediately? Because if Silverstone is just one of his better tracks, then it's probably not the best thing to move him up. But also one of his Alfa Romeo teammates in Division 2 was, let's say, underperforming compared to our expectations. So decided to switch them.
Yeah, he'd also asked for a switch, didn't we? We didn't just look at him and immediately move him down because we wanted to.
Yeah. So but we compared the pace of them, and then we said, yeah, pretty much that's fine. We'll give it a go. Only worked pretty much that well because they're both Alfa Romeo. Otherwise, that would have probably been more difficult. But yeah, you said Mercedes did well. They gained several positions. Jolki P14 to P2. Very nice. And while Clever couldn't deliver for Finland in Division 2, he could at least in Division 3. Thomas picks up P3 at the end because Steve got a huge time penalty for a reset.
Yeah, reset, wasn't it?
Yeah. Steve was fighting Jolki for the last 2 laps really, really hard. It was side by side for many, many corners. But yeah, Thomas always said he's P4, but he's got something to submit. So this has worked out for him. Toto, I think, was with him in the studio room. Trappy P4, solid in the last season as well. And Jobo from our friends from BBC as well. So he gained several positions as well. So quite a mixed up grid here. But yeah, it's difficult to call out who's gonna do well. I mean, obviously, the one we would have predicted, Cotted Ghosts, is now upper division. So it looks like Mercedes might have a good chance here, but as said, it's difficult to predict. As we said last week, it's like a guessing game here. But I guess we just have to wait for Singapore, a different kind of circuit, to see who's got the upper hand there.
Yeah, and I think just to put it in perspective, Colin Ghost's qualifying lap time would put him P5 on the Division 1 grid, which really he would have been just behind Tim S. Sora, who won the race. So I definitely think there's a lot of pace shown there, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do in Division 2. But I am also looking forward to Division 3 because, of course, it's Division 3 is just one of those divisions that these kind of Div 3, Div 4, Div 5, these kind of middle divisions, you really just don't know what's going to happen in them. And I think that's something that really is good about GRL particularly, that we have so many it's so close in terms of pace between these divisions.
Yeah, definitely. And don't want to complain about any other divisions below Division 3, but Division 3 is definitely a division where you would say it's really a top tier division, even though it's like midfield, because it's 3 of 7. It's not like you'd say, okay, Division 3 out of 7, that's a top division. But if you look at the grid, it's really, really good. And we start tumbling down a bit in the other divisions. So, it's going to be interesting over the whole season, because I feel like there's some drivers here that going to have a consistent season. Some of them who probably won't that much, but will just have a pace advantage. So we have to see how that's going to be, because I think Chobo is probably one of those who's a bit under the radar right now, because his quali pace isn't the best, but he's consistent in the races. He gets the job done with his teammate Kuroki. So we'll see where he ends up, because doesn't really matter where you qualify, does it?
No, not at all. But yeah, I think Division 3 really is one to watch out for. Let's move on to Division 4 quickly, and it was Exotic who won this race for the Red Bull team, and he won it relatively well, I think, in the Red Bull. Of course, they had some dry sessions as well, and he qualified quite well compared to some of the others. So I think he really is one to watch out for in this division. Of course, he took home the point for pole. I don't think he got the fastest lap though, because of that. I believe the fastest lap did actually go.
No,
it went to
Y2K.
Y2K. That's it.
But he sadly didn't get the point because he finished outside top 10.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, Exotic definitely want to watch out for. I know him from former leagues. Definitely got some pace in him. I think he's also line only, which is quite remarkable for Division 4 driver, I think. The last time I saw him last game was when he crashed on straight, which was quite remarkable as well. So I hope he only crashes in corners this season. He definitely had a great opening round. The half Dutch driver. So he isn't in the Red Bull without reason.
Yeah.
Jamie Hobbs also solid in second. I think Skills was fighting Hobbs and Exotic in the last 2 laps, but then got a puncture on the softs and got beached.
Yeah.
So that was definitely painful for Mercedes there, because it was a Red Bull Ferrari Mercedes fight up there. But also with 2 penalties for the Alfa Romeos. I think that was Wolfnix and Sniffles. Dobby in the Alpine, which I'm personally quite happy about, got his maiden podium in Division 4. So probably Division 4 with a podium, but I don't recognise all the people on there. But a nice mix, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And again, Ferrari lead the constructors from Division 4. They lead, of course, after this race. It's the reason that it's the 2 cars on the main image of this podcast is that they lead the overall Constructors' Championship after this round. And again, Div 4 as well, one of the tiers that they are leading. But let's move on to Div 5. We'll rattle through these lower end divisions, and it was Ronnie Rosie who took the win for the McLaren team. And with Lemon coming in P5, I think it's a very good result for McLaren because they really get a good kick of points early on in this season, that to the point where they are, because of course with Ferrari scoring 20, they are about 15 points ahead of their closest rivals already, which is a great start for them. And it'll be really interesting to see if they can carry that through this season, because that does look like a strong team in that McLaren.
Yeah, McLaren obviously has some pressure on their shoulders. Won the overall constructors last season, won the Division 1 constructors, won the Division 1 drivers. So they got the grand slam of titles, let's say.
Yeah.
And Ron dominated that race. That's pure domination, what he did there. He got pole. He won the race by, I think, 12 seconds, which made some drivers a bit unhappy. He said, he's placed in the wrong division. But yeah, considering the gaps he had in the race, it's just extending slowly. And I think he wasn't racing Britain last season, but he was around Andrew and Jappers last season. I think that's where we have to expect him to be. So he's definitely on the upper end of this division. Then Jakob Macker and Xelug. Sorry if I butchered that name there, but they are a few newcomers, rookies, so they had a good start to their campaign. Then Lemon, obviously in P5, solid debut for him. Just took the full-time seat over from someone who sadly I couldn't attend anymore. Yeah, Ferrari losing a bit out compared to McLaren here, so they struggled a bit in this division, but still picked up 8 points, I think. So yeah, a few familiar faces down there as well. So it's like Division 3. You can't really say who is top favorite here, because Jappers, DNF, I would have said he's probably on the top end here as well. But he retired, same as Heike and Ricky Bobby. So yeah, looks all fine for Ronnie Rosie and McLaren in here. And I'm sure they'll try to continue this momentum at round 2.
Yeah, 100%. So let's round these F1 divisions off with a look at the final two, starting with Div 6, and it was the Ferrari, again, the Ferrari at the top of Asgaya, who won that race. I mean, due to the way Panda came home in P2, you can see double points finish as well for Mercedes, so they get a decent start to the season, but again, Ferrari on top, as they are in a few of the other divisions as well.
Yeah, and once again, this is quite a familiar picture now, even though Mercedes and McLaren were on the top last season, with Alpine closely behind. It's now Ferrari versus Red Bull, so quite a realistic picture at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Ferrari slightly ahead of Red Bull, with Asgaya, or Luca, I think is his actual name, wins for Ferrari. He said a few hours before the race, hopefully I can do well, hopefully I'm on pace. And I think he was on pace, because he won the race and he qualified in P2 earlier. So well done to him. Then Panda in P2. Yeah, I wasn't sure where I should place him in this division, because I knew how his pace was, but I've barely seen people actually in league races in this division, so I couldn't really say where I would finish. P9 to P2, solid for Red Bull. Christian Horner will be happy. And then my favorite of this division, Echo, in P3, started P3, but he also had a collision with one of the Alpha Tauris, I think, which lost him a bit of time. And I could also see in the Haas chat a few days ago that he was saying, guys, we're 9th, I think, in the overall constructors. We're 9th. We need to step our game up if we want to have a good season here. So looks like he's ready for the challenge, and he wants to get Haas up there with him as well. So yeah, down there then we've got 2 Mercedes in P5 and 6. So once again, the German team having the consistency. Yeah, I can't really say too much here. 10th Cannon, of course, 4th, but for Alpine. But it's all very tight here as well, and we'll just have to wait a few rounds until we know who is the one to look out for here.
Yeah, 100%, and I think we'll really get a good picture of this division by Christmas. We'll move on to the final division of the 7, and in Division 7 it was Jack JT who won the race there for the Aston Martin team. You've got a lovely picture of Sebastian Vettel there. But it was McLaren, interestingly. They don't seem to have done very well in the other divisions, but with 2nd and 4th, they take Constructors' lead. Of course, Bright and Kell, the two Ferraris with a double points finish, and even though it was only 8th and 9th, Aaron and Browns do come home 8th and 9th, double points finish for them as well. So 3 teams with a double points finish, strong starts from them. I think it was Kell ESP who took home the pole position point as well, which helps out Ferrari. But yeah, again, another really good race. And I think, of course, another win for Aston Martin with Delta winning Division 2 as well. So I think, again, these are some really interesting championships that, not necessarily the drivers that we were expecting to be near the top are, and some that we weren't expecting near the top are near the top. And I think that over the next few weeks we'll really start to form a good picture of what kind of pace the certain teams have and what we can kind of expect from the rest of the season, I think.
Yeah, I think some of the Division 7 drivers, considering it's the lowest division of F1 racing we have, went into that race a bit uncertain what's going to happen, because some of them, of course, know the story from last season where we didn't even have 10 finishes in the bottom division who finished the first race. With 14 now, I think. Yeah, 14. With Sedman said the last. So we doubled that amount, which was good. So, yeah, Jack JT won, as said. He only ticked attendance with a few hours before the deadline, or even minutes. So he certainly showed us why he wanted this main seat. With Kieran in second, Newcastle looking to have a good run recently.
Yeah.
And then 2 familiar faces from last season. Terrific Game in P3 and Chicken Rosary in P4. Chicken Rosary, I was like, maybe he's one to watch out for. And he got 4th place. He also had a collision which lost him time. I think it even was with Terrific Gamers. So, yeah. Those 4 already seemed quite fast, but obviously the Ferraris, once again, it's Bright, who had a tough pre-season, let's say, was having a bit problems with the traction zones and was spinning quite a bit. Picks up P5, and also his teammate who got pole position, 1 extra point, and P6 as well, and I also think fastest lap, if I'm not completely mistaken. So they certainly maximized a part of it, because he obviously couldn't fight for the race win, but they did very well for their team and overall constructors. And yeah, it's like Division 6. It's hard to tell, but I think the top 6 are definitely the ones that, if I had a choice, would have predicted up there. But as I said, probably we'll see a surprise winner only in a few days' time.
Yeah, definitely, and I think all 7 divisions are really interesting, and they are really deep in numbers. I mean, just there were more finishes in Division 7 than Division 1, which just shows that you can't take anything away from the lower divisions. They may be slower drivers, but the quality and the excitement is still the same there. But as we draw to an end with these F1 divisions, as with every GRL week, the GRL week ends with the Formula 2, and we had some cracking Formula 2 action. I really can't make this clear enough that the Formula 2 was fantastic this week, and I can't imagine that it won't continue. In the sprint race, it was you, Atom, who took the win. You took the first win. You kept the because of course you're the reigning champion, come straight back with a win. I mean, that must have been good to start the season off well.
Yeah, well, was a nice present for myself. I'd say starting P8 because I qualified third. I wasn't really expecting too much because I knew FSM would have the host start, so he's going to jump me immediately. Or I think he even was ahead. So Yeah, he started 7th for the sprint. I was 8th. So, yeah, I saw him shooting away into the distance. Also, Delta up ahead. I was like, yeah, Delta will have a good chance from P1 to take the sprint win. But a few things happened, and only after just over one lap, I found myself in second behind
Yeah,
FSM. I just had the, without it wanting to sound arrogant, but I think I just had the overall pace
yeah.
because I
No, well,
could
you
break
did.
out
You
the
did.
DRS. Could break out of the DRS luckily quite after a few laps only. And then he was fighting with Gibson all the way, so I could break away. And luckily, I'd take the win with the fastest lap as well, which was a quite good start to not quite a perfect evening in the end.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to that in a minute. But of course, with that, I mean, you got us, Univirtuosi, off to a quite a good start in the constructors, but of course with FSM finishing up in second, he was quite close. Gibson, who finished P3 last season, also finished P3 in that race. And if we're going on the teams, reigning teams champion VAR with Plattis Live finished in P4 as well. So it was an interesting start to the season, but of course there are only so many points on offer in the sprint. I think you only got the 10, all of the for the winner, and then one for fastest lap that was on offer. But it then really led into this feature race, the FSM one, and that was a very good race. I mean, I was fighting with Plattis Live until quite literally the final couple of corners, until I got a puncture at Stowe on the final lap. But I think I just about beat you by something like 0.2 or something to the line. So again, it was a good result for the team, Univirtuosi, but again, with FSM finishing in first, it means that he takes the championship lead after the first round. But of course, with the F2 being at every single race, there's a long, long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really the perfect weekend for Virtuosi, if you be honest, because he had some struggles in qualifying in the final sector. Also in the sprint. And then when we said, yeah, maybe a good feature, I got hit as well by one of the high techs, I think, and which put me down to the bottom of the field. So we definitely could have gotten more points, because I think the overall pace was definitely there. But you could recover, I think, to P8 in the sprint, and I luckily took a 5 in the feature. Of course, it was a bit mad that I missed out on you by 2.5 tenths or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I hadn't made the contact, I could have made it, obviously. Yeah, was a solid first weekend to start off on a track where you can quite easily go wheel to wheel with each other. And now we're gonna go into the streets of Singapore next week, which is gonna be quite a tough challenge, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And again, thanks to Zinity for doing the comms for the F2. He really covers the F2 well, and apart from when he disconnects, which is, it's not his fault, but it is quite unfortunate. But yeah, that brings us to an end of the review of the week, and we can just go back and have a look at the calendar, because we've got Singapore, of course, we've mentioned multiple times, coming up next week, and we've got Mexico coming up as well. Those two tracks are so completely different that I think that we will really... I think Britain, Singapore and Mexico are a very good combination of three to kind of kick the season off, because I feel that they are three very different tracks with very different characteristics, and we can kind of get to grips with who is emerging as frontrunners in each division.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Singapore, from what I learned so far, I definitely need a bit of practice there to get into the rhythm. So that's going to be, as said, an interesting race in all of the 9 divisions. And yeah, I'm quite gutted that I won't be able to practice much for Mexico due to private reasons. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting race as well. Not one of my favorite tracks, but I think it will be an interesting race. We raced there for once in season 1, where Diego, one of our graphic designers, made his debut in GRL in his home race. So will be an interesting race as well. But I think we have to cope with the streets of Singapore first before we go onto one of the longest start-finish straights of the whole calendar.
Yeah, and again, Mexico's a great track for overtaking if you can get it right. But yes, that's all we've got time for this GRL podcast episode. If you've enjoyed it, then make sure you tune in next week for the next episode. But I am very much looking forward to next week's Singapore Grand Prix. We thank you all for listening, / watching along to the podcast, and we hope you will join us again next week when GRL returns.